The Plus Pass gives you access to events, presentations, and meetings around the world that you might not be able to see otherwise. This week, we're going to give you something completely different. In fact, we've never done it on Real Vision before. We've secured access to an interview between a VC and a hot new startup, and to give you a taste of what lies ahead, just watch this.
We're literally getting our first orders this week. We've actually already won a contract with a large case management company in Georgia, which will be sending us around 300, 350 scans per month to our network, which equates to just under 500K of gross revenue, monthly gross revenue with that one deal alone. And we've only been properly live for like a week.
Let me give you some backstory. We've managed to persuade the VCs at Episode 1 Ventures in London to let us sit in on their calls with the entrepreneurs who have made it to the final rounds of The Stage. Now, The Stage is a demo day event for startups. It begins with an open invitation to entrepreneurs, and typically around 1,400 startups apply. And their applications are then reviewed by around 100 different VCs who vote on the 15 they like most. Those 15 then get to pitch at The Stage demo day. Many of the startups that have pitched at The Stage have gone on to raise funding from top-tier investors like Lightspeed and Google Ventures and 20 VC. At this point, though, the startups are still straight out of the gate, so it's early days. This really is ground floor investing. In fact, SVPs have been created for each of the 15, and attendees to The Stage event can invest in the ones they like with checks as small as $1,000. In this video, you are going to see an interview between one of the VCs, who also happens to be the co-founder of The Stage, and the founder of a startup that has made it to the final 15. The startup is called Scan.com. Their business is all about booking medical scans in the US and UK, and we chose it for you not only because it's really interesting, but it's also a hidden investment opportunity. Oh yes, and remember, if you actually want to invest in the startup yourself, you can do so at the end of the film. So let's see how the interview went.
Charlie, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks, Hector. Really appreciate it.
Real pleasure to have you, and we're super excited about what you guys are doing at Scan.com. So just wanted to run through a bunch of questions and hear much more about kind of you, your founders. So tell us a little bit about what you're solving and how you do that.
Diagnostic imaging market is very broken in the sense that you have this incredibly fragmented, antiquated supply side of imaging centers, and many of them are independent mom and pop shops. There's some larger chains, but they operate very independently and in a way which we find very antiquated. And then you have this increasingly discerning consumer patient side of the market, in which we're all getting quite accustomed to the offerings of telehealth now, whether it's a Babylon Health or a Teladoc in the US, and being able to see a doctor online pretty much immediately. But that never really cascaded across the radiology market. So around 1 in 10 patients per year will have some kind of imaging done or a diagnostics done, but there was just no consumerized way to access it. So you'd have to go from this beautiful telehealth experience to going to have to phone up your local hospitals to try and get a transparent price, to try and actually schedule your exam. And then when you actually went for your exam, you were given a CD back with your results in. So we were really bringing this antiquated way of getting diagnosed. So Scan.com now is a marketplace which enables patients to access diagnostics in a consumerized manner. By consumerized, we mean price transparency, we mean live scheduling, and we mean easy access to patient-friendly results. But more importantly, over the last 6 to 9 months, we've really doubled down on making all of the software that we've built available to 2 other groups. So physicians, we have over 150 physicians now in the UK using our platform to book their patients in for imaging. And then also other telehealth companies. So we have an API now, which allows other digital health and telehealth companies that have existing cohorts of patients which may need imaging to obtain that imaging for their patients through our API.
I see. Okay, so I'm kind of now picturing like a middleware layer that you guys are building through which anyone who ever books a scan for a patient or for themselves goes in order to book that scan. So yeah, tell me a bit about your background and what led you to the problem.
Yeah, sure. So my personal background is I trained at KPMG, and then as soon as I qualified, left straight into the world of startups. So spent a bit of time at Deliveroo, which is the European equivalent of DoorDash, and then went into a couple of other kind of marketplace platform businesses, including one called Pollen, and another platform that I actually started myself called Campus, which we ended up selling to GradTouch. So I've always been fascinated by these kind of marketplace platform plays, and then met my co-founder, who's actually a good family friend of mine, Dr. Latif, a consultant radiologist, who had this great insight into the radiology market and the dysfunctioning of the market. He's been a radiologist now for just over 25 years, so incredibly experienced, both in the UK and also trained in the US. And then finally, my third co-founder, Ollie Knight, he spent quite a lot of time at Rothschild in M&A, and then moved into startups as well, he was the managing director at Rocket Internet before he joined us at scan.com.
Is this a UK focused problem, or is this a global problem?
Yeah, so we initially built all of the software and all the platform around the UK market. However, after around a year of operating, we started to really dig into the US market, and people from the US were asking about what we were developing. And it was at that time that we realized that the problem in the US was just so much more exacerbated, that our solution would work better in the US. So the last 12 months or so has been all about kind of landing in the US and expanding.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So what are the sort of different routes to landing at scan.com?
Yeah, for sure. So we think of ourselves as having three front doors, essentially. Front door number one is you land on scan.com as a consumer. You might have a niggle or a pain and you want to get a scan. You might have a referral from a doctor or not, but you're coming to our website. Our second front door is as a physician. You have patients coming into your practice. Some doctors are sending 5-10 patients a week for imaging. And then finally, the telehealth environment.
What's the actual problem that people are facing? Is it that they have to phone up scan centers, or that they Google a scan center and they're fully booked, or it's not a good quality scan center, or it's not in their area? And so what's the actual problem with the market at the moment? Why does it need this aggregation layer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. We have to look at this through two different lenses, UK and US, because they are two different problem sets.
Sure.
For the purpose of this, let's focus on the US, because that is by far our largest market. Problems in the US, like number one, is price transparency. There's over 900 different insurance companies in the US. Every insurance company has a different negotiated rate with every imaging center. So from a permutations perspective, it's just impossible for a doctor or a patient to know how much it's going to cost. And actually, imaging centers can't give accurate estimates to their patients about how much an exam is going to cost. Typically, you get your bill after you've had your scan in the US. So price transparency is a real problem. And the other side of that is price variability in the imaging world is a big problem. So the same exam can cost a completely different amount of money, 3 to 5x differences in variation depending from one imaging center to another. So we bring transparency right to the forefront of what we do. You go on scan.com in the US, you will see all of the prices that we estimate, and we use a data tool to aggregate all of the different negotiated prices from all of these different insurance companies and make patients aware of how much an exam is going to cost depending on what insurance company they're with, or if they want to pay out of pocket. So that's kind of core value prop number one, or problem number one that we're solving for. Number two is all around scheduling. So before we existed, we've built all of our own scheduling technology. We're not utilizing someone's API, or we're not utilizing kind of pre-existing technology. We've built all of this over the last year, and we go and directly integrate into all of these imaging centers to extract these live available slots, and then aggregate them across the market. So that is that before we existed, you'd have to basically phone around imaging centers asking what's their availability, and then literally write it down on a piece of paper, compare, and then go back and order and then pick one when you've then actually tried to figure out a price. So that's the two big reasons why aggregation works in this market. And then finally, the final problem statement is a lot of kind of patients with chronic illness, chronic disease, all patients that are looking to get screening tests done, like breast cancer screening, lung cancer screening, etc. Without us, they'd have to essentially kind of keep these collections of CDs, PDFs that they get given with the reports, and there's nowhere to store them. They have to go back to the same imaging center over time, but people move address, etc. What we do is with scan.com, once you've ordered your imaging, we store all those images, all of those findings are stored in one account. And over, 5, 10, 15 years, especially if you're getting screening tests done, like all of that is stored in one place, no matter what imaging center you go to for those tests.
Super interesting. So I think the value prop on the demand side is very clear, right? I wonder on the supply side, so for these imaging centers, what do they love about scan.com?
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, it's the incremental revenue that we can generate for them in a manner which is very, very automated. And so what I mean by that is, the revenue generation of this is pretty simple, right? And imaging centers, they're buying MRI machines, CT machines. It can often be over $1 million each. So just imaging centers, they just want patients through the door so they can pay back those machines more quickly. But the second slightly more nuanced piece of this is, we integrate with every single imaging center that's on the scan.com platform. So we're not just another doctor sending them through, a scribbled PDF and fax it through, and they have to pay someone to sit there at the desk, input that into the system, call the patient to schedule the exam, call the insurance company to obtain the pre-authorization, then chase the insurance company for payment manually. We automate all of that. So literally the patient shows at their front door, they have an ID card, they get their scan, and it's done. So not only are we generating incremental revenue for them, but it's pretty high margin revenue because we automate everything on their behalf.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do they not mind about the transparent pricing? Like sometimes the reason non-transparent pricing exists is because people are being charged through the nose because they can. So they happy to take the incremental extra bookings in exchange for offering a flat price.
Yeah, in a way, we kind of force that behavior because we think that's how the market should run. And we're bringing that transparency to the market and all of the data. So actually, as of July 1st this year, the price transparency rule was enacted in the US. And that meant that all different payers, every different insurance company in the US had to disclose and has to disclose every 6 months their negotiated rates with imaging centers in a format which is machine readable. But because of that, price transparency is here. We're just bringing it to the forefront in a manner which is consumerized. Like if we were trying to do what we're doing right now, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, like it wouldn't have been possible because imaging centers would not want transparency. You're right.
Sure. No, makes sense. And I'd love to talk a bit about your go-to-market. And you've got your different go-to-markets, right? You've got the consumer approach, and then you've got the API, and probably some partnerships and other things. So I'd just love to hear, what you're excited about in terms of go-to-market and how it's been going up until now.
Yeah, for sure. So we have these 3 strands of go-to-market, and they very much align with these 3 front doors, right? So there's your traditional like direct-to-consumer approach, which is the scan.com marketplace and getting patients to hear about us organically and then come onto our website and book a scan. There's then the go-to-market, which is the referring physician front door, so getting referring physicians to really refer patients into us. And then finally, there's the kind of a more enterprise level go-to-market, which is signing up partnerships with insurance companies, with other telehealth companies, other big digital health companies that will integrate our API and then are sending patients in, every day through our API, and it's in an incredibly automated manner. But there's a long sales cycle. So just kind of going back, one by one, our big focus right now in the US is the referring physician sales channel. And how the actual go-to-market on that looks like is pretty direct sales. We have a sales team in the US now, which we're building out city by city, and those salespeople are just knocking on doors, speaking with doctors. And the unit economics of this just work in our market because an average scan in the US is something around $1,200, and a typical physician can do anything from 5 to 10 a month on average. So by signing up one doctor, that's generating on average per hours around 10 to 12,000 monthly gross revenue by signing up one doctor, and a good salesperson in a big city that we're in can sign up a doctor a day. So that's kind of how we think about it. It seems quite old school, like direct sales. We're paying people to knock on doors, but it just works. And that's the biggest, best companies in the digital health sector in the US. GoodRx is a big inspiration of ours, scaled in that way because having the physicians just amplify and champion your products is so much more scalable over the long term than having to pay Google or Facebook to do the same. Physician sales is all about trust and relationship building, but fundamentally, the workflows in the market right now is around 90% of diagnostic orders are submitted by fax in the outpatient setting. And our platform, we know, is the next evolution. We're taking physicians beyond fax, and this is so much better for their patient outcomes. Patients get scheduled quicker, they drop out the imaging process less, so therefore they have less misdiagnoses and better access to care. So we know it's a good thing for the patients. We know it's a good thing for physicians because they just don't want to have to send faxes anymore and keep massive boxes of faxes behind their desk.
You just solve a very clear pain point for them, right? I wonder, just to dive a little bit into the market and how you think about market size. The thing going through the back of my mind is, clearly there's a lot spent on scans annually, but how much of that can you actually capture?
At a very, very high level, there's a couple of ways you can do these market calcs. We take about, one of the methods you can use is you look at the amount of imaging sites that are in that are in the outpatient setting. We know approximately how many scans they're doing per day just from our own volume because we're integrated into most of these imaging sites that we work with. And then we look at the average cost per scan. And so if you're looking at around 6,500 outpatient imaging centers in the US working at around 50 scans per day, that's across multiple machines that they have in those centers, times about 260 working days in a year, times about $1,200 is the average cost of an advanced scan in the US. You're getting to just over $108 billion in market size in the US. And that doesn't account for any of the endoscopy market or these other tangential markets, which we want to go into later on down the line. The question we get is, what can we capture? And how we think about it is, once again, we always think about bottoms up approach. And how we look at it is, what can we feasibly achieve? Can we get 50 scans per day in a state? Yes, that's pretty easy. Okay, times that by the average price, times that by the days in the year that I gave you before, and times that by the 50 state that we want to be in. That gets you at just to over about $1 billion in gross revenue. That's how we become a $1 billion gross revenue company, is to get 50 scans per day per state. And then you can scale that up and down how you see fit, but that's kind of like our internal barometer to success.
Sure. Okay, yeah, you make it sound very easy. So talk to us about your business model and how you actually make money.
Yeah, sure. So I think just before we go into this, it's important to know that how the unit economics of an imaging center work, because that's where we make our money, right? Is that once you buy an MRI machine or a CT machine and you've staffed that facility, and these are expensive machines, expensive facilities. Once you've done all of the initial investment, your marginal cost of doing another scan is basically zero. It's just the electricity that goes into that scan. There's nothing else needed, right? So because of that, we know that we can levy quite a heavy margin on the imaging centers as long as we provide them with really high quality incremental revenue. So that's what we do. We don't charge any of the referring physicians any money. We don't charge any of the patients any additional money. We don't charge any of our demand sources essentially any money at all. For API integrations with a telehealth company, it's free, right, for all of them. All of our money is made on the imaging center side. So we negotiate really good rates with our imaging centers. We say to them, we ask them, what's a fair price if we're going to send you a patient, and everything's automated. That patient just turns up, has a 20-minute scan and leaves. How much do we have to pay for that? And we agree these set rates, these set flat rates, and then we mark them up to whoever the end payer is. Is it an insurance company? We negotiate rates with insurance companies. Is it a consumer landing on our website? We have super low cash pay rates. Is it a clinical research organization? Is it an attorney that's got a personal injury case? We have all of these different prices for all of these different payers essentially on their propensity to pay, but our flat cost rate is the same. So that's kind of like our model is, and all of our margin is made on a transactional basis.
Sure. And at the moment, what percentage of gross revenue are you guys making as your take?
Yeah, so typically our margin is around 25%.
Sure.
It's edging closer to 30%, and at the start of this year it was 20%. So yeah, it's climbing, and we very much see that the more value we can bring to the transaction, the more margin that we can take from it.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I'm sure the sort of taking the burden of bookings and scheduling is another value add. What sort of level of traction are you at? How much revenue are you doing, and where do you think that's going to go over the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, for sure. So we've just hit over $3 million now in gross revenue in the UK.
Is that per year or in total?
Per year. Annualized gross revenue. It's important to note that at the start of this summer, 100% of our revenue was direct to consumer. And the fastest growing part of our business now is the B2B part by a long way. So in the UK, we've now got over 150 physicians using the platform. That was zero at the start of this year, generating so solid revenues for us. And then we've also just won a couple of insurance contracts. That isn't captured in our current annualized revenue because they're not going to launch until Q1, Q2 next year. But these are with some of the largest health insurance companies in the UK, and will multiply our current revenue by a factor of 2 or 3 in the UK. And then in the US, we've literally just launched. So we're at about 35 imaging centers right now. The B2C part of our website hasn't really truly launched yet. The B2B is just kicking off. And when I say just, like, we're literally getting our first orders this week. But we've actually already won a contract with a large case management company in Georgia, which will be sending us around 350 scans per month to our network, which equates to just under 500k of gross revenue, monthly gross revenue with that one deal alone. And we've only been properly live for like a week in the States.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I just wonder about network effects. It seems like this would be something that becomes quite sticky, particularly if it's like an API built into the flows of an insurance company. Like that would take a lot to displace you there. But how do you think about sort of what network effects you can build with a view to then, maybe how that evolves your business model or how much you can charge, and also, let's start with that, and then we can talk a bit about competition as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything we do is built around stickiness. Like, we want to be embedded in workflows, whether that's in the telehealth environment, whether that's in the referring physician environment, or whether that's a patient who's coming to us for an annual screening test. Everything we build is revolved around that stickiness metric. The more imaging sites we bring on board, the more value we are to our referring physicians. And that is why fundamentally we have not tried to launch nationwide or even statewide. We are literally launching city by city. And even within those cities, we launch like area by area. We get an imaging center on board, and then we get all the referring physicians around that imaging center. And then we become part of that workflow. And it makes no sense for the imaging centers to drop off because they're going to lose all of that referring physician demand. And it makes no sense for a referring physician to drop off because the imaging center will no longer accept that fax. So that's how we operate. If we tried to do this on a nationwide basis, like, you would not be able to get that network effects flywheel spinning because you just have you'd be too diluted on one side of the marketplace. And that's been like the core thesis of our go-to-market in the US.
Makes sense. Are there people who you see doing similar things?
Yeah, so we have 2 real competitors in the US. One is called affordablescan.com. If you go on their website, you'll see the kind of the difference with us. We actually looked at acquiring them earlier this year, and it didn't happen. But we don't really view them as long-term competition. And then secondly is Medmo. They're very much focused on, they'll have an imaging center in a state, and they've got Oklahoma or whatever because they've got one imaging center there. We are literally city by city, and we build defensibility into what we do. So actually, we haven't talked about this yet, but the vast majority of our imaging centers that we work with are exclusive to us. Like, they can't go and work with anyone else. And we do that because we bring them in to these very tight networks, and we then get them to sign an exclusivity clause.
Sure. No, that's great. I mean, it sounds like you're taking some learnings from delivery there. Just a question I like to ask people towards the end. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, really good question. Fortunately, I do sleep quite well, but that's probably because I'm so tired at the end of the day. But, I think one of the things I think about a lot is team construction over time, in a sense that we are a UK company. We're UK based, and we probably going to end up building the vast majority of our team in the UK with regards to marketing, finance, your traditional kind of administrative functions, and really just keeping sales and product on the ground in the US. But because of that, there's cultural differences. There's also teams which are working on 2 completely different geographies, and just really being deliberate and trying to foresee some of the issues as they arise when we're building this kind of 2-track approach to our go-to-market. So that's one of them. And then the second one really is just making sure we can hire like incredible people. in the US, especially because that's such a crucial market for us, and it is so hard to find the right talent in the digital health space because there's just been so much money pumped in by VCs over the last 2-3 years. That talent is just being paid so well and has such good benefits. I think, fortunately, because of the recapitalization in the market, so kind of over the last 6 to 9 months, there has been a few more people coming back into the job market, which has made it easier, but it's still tough.
And what are you most excited about? What's your ambition here?
Yeah, I think what we're doing. The early signals we've got in the US are just insane, like really insane. And that excites me so much because I want to build a business in which becomes part of a workflow of a clinician or a physician, in which just makes their life so much easier. If you're giving a physician back 10-15 minutes a day, and you compound that over 1,000 physicians on a daily basis, like that is just making not only their lives so much better, but it allows them to spend more time with their patients, and it will just have a better societal impact or a good societal impact. And that is, super exciting. What we're doing scales so quickly because, those physicians that are using scan.com are actually kind of our salespeople. So by getting them on board, this scales really quick. That excites me. And then, the leverage that we can have on patient outcomes and physician outcomes is just really cool.
How much are you raising and how's the raise going?
Yeah, so we're going to raise 50 million. Raise has gone well. We're very, very close to getting a lead over the line. Should actually know probably in the next day or so. And I'll be able to announce who that is. And yeah, we've got some other really good co-investors. We've got a couple of strategics in the US coming into this round, which is exciting for us because that's going to help so much on the health insurance side. Those strategics are. They're going to close over the next month or so, maybe month and a half. And then, so 2023 is just all about execution and scaling.
Fantastic. Charlie, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I'm extremely excited about scan.com. So thanks for speaking to us. And hopefully there'll be lots of demand from the people watching this.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks, Hector. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So there you have it. Eavesdropping on a conversation between a VC and a startup that is pitching for more funding. As an investor, here are the points that I took away from this interview. The first thing I liked was that these guys aren't trying to reinvent the wheel. They're simply taking the well-trodden path of digitizing an existing industry that is working with out-of-date practices. Can you believe it when he said that people in this space still rely on sending faxes? Well, what's amazing is that this technological shift hasn't happened already. But that's probably because this is such a specialist sector. It's hidden from view to most people. Secondly, I like the fact that they have multiple consumer entry points, from doctors to insurance companies to telehealth organizations to patients making contact themselves. Next, I like the fact that the founders already know each other well, which is often critical for long-term success. They already have deep finance and startup experience, and they have a medical insider on the team who gives them specialist insight. Most important of all, though, this is a business that is solving a genuine problem. If I had a concern, it would be that the management team are UK-based, and this is an operation that is clearly going to be driven by the US market. If things go as well as they hope, they're going to have to think very hard about how they manage that issue without imploding. Fascinating, eh? It is so rare to be on the inside of a meeting like this and see what the VCs see. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you want to follow up on this investment opportunity with scan.com, just go to www.thestage.ventures/SPV.